Hello MTG friends, Zach here, back with another video. Today we're doing something that I have only done really once on the channel before, and it's been a little while. We're doing deck updates. The last time I did this, it was just for a single deck. I was updating my Sheree Shizo's Caretaker deck. Today, we are actually going over cards from March of the Machine Aftermath. I'm going to be updating 7 of my Commander decks with new cards that I'm excited about from this set, and then also just talk about a few of the cards that I'm excited about that maybe aren't making the cut in some of my existing decks, or maybe I don't have a deck for them. So, let's go ahead and get right into it. I did a little bit of prep work for this, so I have the real new card sitting in the maybe board, and then I have marked a card in the deck, and then I'm going to talk about why I'm going to be swapping them. Alright, so the first deck that we are going to be looking at is my mono white deck. It stars a Sephara Sky's Blade. It's called Sephara, Seph wherever you are. And we're going to be looking at Metropolis Reformer. This is a 3-mana Angel Cleric with Flying and Vigilance. You have Hexproof, and whenever Metropolis Reformer is dealt damage, you gain that much life. It's a 2/3. And I think the real art to be using here is this absolutely beautiful art by Sammy Halem. This is phenomenal, absolutely top tier, like Capenna style artwork. And I think this is going to be replacing Endless Atlas in this deck. Now, Endless Atlas is a good magic card in monocolor decks, but I think that I have gained enough card draw of the last year or so. I've gained cards like War Room, Welcoming Vampire in the last couple of years. We picked up Sarah Paragon recently, which is just a good recursion piece. And then more importantly, we picked up a Chivalric Alliance, and we picked up Firemane Commando out of March of the Machine, the Commander sets. So I just think Endless Atlas has kind of lost the strength of its place in this deck, and I'm going to be replacing Metropolis Reformer into the deck over this Endless Atlas here. If you are interested in looking at any of these deck lists, by the way, you can check the description. Also, if you are interested in any of these decks as a full-on deck tech, please let me know in the comments. I would be happy to record one of these for you guys. And of course, for any future videos like that, you should like to show me that you like this kind of content. You should subscribe so you could see some more, and apparently you're supposed to ring the bell as well to get notifications when I upload a video like once every month or so. The more engagement we get, though, the more inspired I am to start trying to upload some more, so always helps if you are interested. Appreciate it. Alright, so that's Sephara. Feeling pretty easy. That was a nice easy one. We got a nice list of creatures, and we'll be adding a 36th creature with flying to the deck. Next up over here, we're going to be looking at Edgar Markov himself. Yes, this is like the most generic tribal deck on Earth, but I've been curating an Edgar Markov list since he came out back in 2017, and I don't see any reason to stop. We, of course, get an absolute auto include in this deck with Markov Baron. 2 and a black for a 2/2 Vampire Noble with Convoke, which means my creatures can be tapped to pay 4 parts of this mana cost. It has lifelink. Other vampires I control get +1/+1, and then it also has Madness for 2 and a black. So if you would discard it, you can discard that card into exile and then cast it from there, or put it in the graveyard. This is, of course, an auto-include in this deck. This is a Vampire Lord. It synergizes with Big Daddy Markov's ability in the first place, where he's making a lot of 1/1 black vampire creatures. Markov Baron is black. Those little tokens convoke perfectly into the Markov Baron and then start pumping up the team. The card that I'm taking out is actually one of my recent additions. I put in Conjurer's Mantle from March of the Machine Commander, and I've found that it doesn't really fit this deck. It's a little slow. Looking at only 6 and just getting a vampire out of it just wasn't really a big appeal to me. Tried it out for a couple of games and just felt like it was a little too low impact to make a good hit. So we're going to be putting another creature in and getting Markov Baron in its place. So those are pretty simple swap as well. Just not really anything super crazy. This is a very standard Edgar Markov, super aggro, lots of attacking list. Only a couple like cute includes here, but I think if you looked at a list on something like EDH Rec, you'd probably see most of these cards there. This is a pretty standard list. Alright, next up we have my newest paper deck, Goro Goro and Satoru, and Everyone Can Be a Ninja. This is a brand new card out of the pre-release kits from March of the Machine. And they are a really interesting Grixis deck that cares about either hasty creatures or ninjas or cheating things into play or just lots of really fun little effects to try and get a creature that has entered this turn dealing damage, and then you get paid off by getting a big red dragon spirit with flying. The card that I will be including in this deck from March of the Machine Aftermath is Arnie Metalbrow. This is 2 and a red for a 3/3 human berserker. It's a legendary creature. Whenever a creature you control attacks or a creature enters the battlefield under your control attacking, you can pay 1 and a red. If you do, put a creature card with mana value less than that creature's mana value from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. What I think is really cool about Arnie Metalbrow is if I have the mana up, you can just cascade those abilities. You pay 1 and a red because a creature I control has attacked. You drop a dude in tapped and attacking. Hey, look, there's a dude in there tapped, entering the battlefield tapped and attacking. Whoa! You can pay 1 and a red and drop another one in. So you can just kind of drop your way down the mana value, and it's a really great way to get 1 creature pointed at each opponent that has been attacking this turn and get 3 whole dragons off of your Goro and Satoru. It took me a little while to actually get a card cut for this one. I'm really happy with this deck list, and obviously, like I said, this is my latest deck in paper. I last updated this deck on the first 9 days ago recording this video. And after looking around, and I've done some actual like in-person playtests with this deck, I think Oversold Cemetery is probably what's going to end up coming out here. I think there's already a couple of ways to get stuff out of the graveyard here. I don't really mind sacrificing some stuff. There's lots of card draw. So I think having that recursive piece was probably the weakest option out of everything I was looking at, and I think Arnie might be a better try. I was looking at some other effects that I might want to get rid of here, but I was really happy with my instant interaction suite. My sorceries, there's only 4 of them that aren't doubling as a land, and they're all either removal, card draw, or tutoring. And creature-wise, I've been pretty happy, I think, with most of the creatures that we've got in here. Everything played really nicely with a couple of games I got to jam with this deck. So I think we're going to try cutting Oversold Cemetery and see if that removal of recursion is something that I can afford in this deck, or if I need to dial it back and find another cut for Arnie. Next up here, we have Prosper Tomebound. Once again, this is, a very popular, very standard deck. I've been curating this list since Prosper came out with Adventures in the Forgotten Realms commander decks. This is, of course, Live Long and Prosper. I have 2 cards from March of the Machine Aftermath that I'm going to be plugging into Prosper. We have Obnixilis, Captive Kingpin. He is 2 black-red for a legendary demon. He's a 4/3 with flying and trample. Whenever 1 or more opponents lose exactly 1 life, put a 1/1 counter on him, and then you can exile the top card of your library and play it until your next end step. Now, what I really like about this is Prosper is very much kind of a treasury deck for me. So, he makes treasures. I'm trying to exile cards off the top of my library, but then I'm also looking for little ping effects. Things like Disciple of the Vault. Things like, let's see, where's my recent edition here? Not Nelfeshni. Mayhem Devil here is a good one. Keeper of Secrets if it's a small spell. And then this brand new one, Hedron Detonator out of March of the Machine's commander set. There's a little 1 ping damage here. So I've got enough like little pinging effects in this deck, I feel, that Obnixilis has a really easy way of, just grabbing a free card and a 1/1 counter on top of him as well. And he's also a pretty decent-sized body with flying and trample. The second card that I would like to put in this deck is Plarg and Nassari. 3 red for a 5/4 legendary orc Efreet. At the beginning of my upkeep, each player exiles cards from the top of their library until they hit a non-land card. An opponent chooses a non-land card exiled this way, and then you may cast up to 2 spells from among the other cards exiled this way for free. Now, Plarg and Nassari, I think I'm going to be plugging in over an old favorite, Stolen Strategy. Stolen Strategy is a very popular card in this deck. I think it's probably way up there in the EDH rec rankings. Pardon me. My chair's making a lot of noise too. Whoops. But Stolen Strategy is a really popular card because every one of your turns you get to look at 3 cards from the top of your opponent's libraries and then you can cast them. The catch is you do actually have to pay mana for those cards. And while Prosper definitely generates a lot of mana, I would like to give Plarg and Nassari a try because while it technically gives you 1 less card that you get to play with and it's the worst, you get the 2 worst of the 3 revealed cards, you get to play them for free. And I think that's pretty significant and is going to be an interesting attempt over Stolen Strategy. Also just gets another creature in this deck. Prosper draws a lot of hate, and having some decent-sized bodies is certainly a good way to go. This also just exchanges mana value for mana value. 4 and a red for 3, red. Pretty close. And then I think Obnixilis Captive Kingpin is going to be replacing Rakdos Charm. I have had this card in this deck for so long, hoping to get that last mode off just to kill somebody who has a bunch of creatures. It's never happened. Not once for me. Additionally, Rakdos Charm itself feels fairly low impact on all of the other effects. Destroying an artifact is not really something I need on a bunch of other things when I've already got things like You Found Some Prisoners in this deck. I've already got sorceries that have a very similar effect. There's my sorceries. We already have Vandal Blast in here. Like, we have the ability to remove some artifacts. I don't think the Rakdos Charm has been pulling its weight. I think I'm going to be removing that as well. Slotting in another creature with Obnixilis Captive Kingpin. All right, we got 3 more decks to look at. Next one is Siona, Captain of the Pyleus, or Siona Wonder Woman, because, I mean, look at her. It's Wonder Woman. Siona, Captain of Pyleus is 1 in green and white for a 2/2. She is important. I'm going to be reading her real quick because she is a combo deck. This is all about a 1 specific combo with the card Shielded by Faith. So Siona lets you look at the top 7. You can pull an aura out of it, put it into your hand, the rest go on the bottom. But importantly, whenever an aura you control becomes attached to a creature you control, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. And Shielded by Faith, the really important card here, right here with the beautiful Gideon Spellbook art, you enchant a creature, it has indestructible, and when a creature enters the battlefield, you can attach Shielded by Faith to that creature. So the combo here is really simple. You have Siona on the board, you attach Shielded by Faith to anything. It doesn't matter. Any creature on your board, go for it. Siona triggers and makes you a 1/1. Shielded by Faith sees a creature entering, you can now move Shielded by Faith to that creature. Siona sees an aura becoming attached to a creature. You can move Shielded by Faith once again, and you can do this until you decide that you don't want to make any more soldiers, and you choose with Shielded by Faith to not make another soldier, or rather not move it, so you don't have to make another soldier, and you end up with as many creatures as you'd like, and near infinite number of 1/1s. So the deck that I've built with Siona here is really just a crazy, super speedy, that's supposed to be green, super fast, get Shielded by Faith out of the deck, win the game with Shielded by Faith through various methods, such as things like Blasting Station, Skull Clamping them to draw a bunch of cards, or a couple other options here in like the creatures and other fun stuff. This is a really powerful deck, and it's a really fast deck. And so there are 2 cards that I think 3 cards that I'm going to be adding from Aftermath that I think will make the deck a little faster and a little more resilient. The first is a new uncommon. It is an instant called Cosmic Rebirth for 1 green and white. You can choose a permanent card in your graveyard. If it has mana value 3 or less, put it onto the battlefield, and if you don't put it on the battlefield, you put it into your hand, and then gain 3 life. Why not just 3 life on top of that? Now, you may have noticed when I pulled it up earlier, Shielded by Faith happens to be 1 white, so 3 mana. And when an aura enters the battlefield under your control, but it wasn't cast, so you didn't have to target it, you just get to put it on something. So, with Cosmic Rebirth and my instant suite, I now have the ability to, out of absolutely nowhere, as long as Siona is on the board, drop it onto the board for just 3 mana again, gain 3 life, and then make infinite 1/1s on someone end step, allowing me to a little more sneakily untap and then swing in for the kill. I think this card is just absolutely vile in this deck. It is so cool, so powerful. I am definitely going to be picking up, let's see, is it this one? Nope, not. I do like the old art for this one, but I think what I would like is this beauty right here. I think I want the etched foil of the original. I just love this very beautiful, like Aurora Borealis kind of thing, as we're seeing the beginnings of the World Tree on Kaldheim regrowing. The next card that I will be adding is a new legendary creature, Danitha, New Benalia's Light. For 1 green and a white, you get a 2/2 legendary human knight with vigilance, trample, and lifelink. Once during each of your turns, you can cast an aura or equipment spell from your graveyard. This is real simple. This is just a way to recast Shielded by Faith out of the graveyard on my turn. Just recast it. You're going to have to exile it if you really want a way to get it back. And then the last card I was looking at here is Leyline Immersion. For 3 and a green, you can enchant a legendary creature with this aura. The enchanted creature gets ward 2, and you can tap it to add 5 mana in any combination of colors, only to cast spells. The reason I'm interested in this card is twofold. One, it's an aura, so it works with Siona. But more importantly, it's a protection spell and mana ramp all in one package. Doing Siona on 3, finding a Leyline Immersion perhaps, and then dropping that on 4, sets me up with 5 mana on a creature that can tap, and use that to cast something else out of my hand and really speed the process along here. And the fact that it's in any combination of colors means I can just instantly generate the white in order to cast my Shielded by Faith, and even be holding up 1 or 2 mana as some backup. Very powerful effect. So there's 3 cards I'm going to be cutting out of this. The first is Gift of Immortality. This is one of those kind of backup auras that I had in this deck in case Shielded by Faith gets permanently removed. When the enchanted creature dies, it's an aura, for 3 mana. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control and put Gift of Immortality on it at the beginning of the next end step. This was intended to be kind of like a recursive effect for Siona herself, trying to make sure that if she dies, she comes back and then can get another aura. But honestly, I found this effect to be pretty slow, and I think it's going to be replaced by one of these 3 cards. The next is honestly a favorite of mine. I love my Dryad of the Elysian Grove, but I don't think that he's contributing to the deck in a meaningful way. This deck is looking for 3 mana. Maybe 6 if I'm trying to do Siona and Shielded by Faith on the same turn. Maybe 7 if I want a silence backup. I don't think that Dryad's ramp here, by just giving me the ability to play an additional land, is going to end up mattering very often, and even when I do play it, it doesn't. And lands being every basic land type doesn't change a whole lot for this deck. This is definitely a favorite card of mine, and it's a favorite card of a lot of people based on the fact that it's like a $18 to $20 card. And of course, we have to be playing the best art from Miss Fiona Staples, the incredible artist, but I don't think that this deck is going to be continuing to play this card. The last one we're going to be cutting is Danitha, Benalia's Hope, ironically probably being replaced by the newest Danitha that I talked about here. This is from Dominaria United, and Danitha is really cool. When she enters, you can put in aura equipment from your hand or graveyard for free attached to Danitha. It's pretty solid, but at 5 mana, I'm a little more interested in the 3 mana one that lets me cast recursively every turn, rather than one with just an enter the battlefield effect. This was a good card while I had it in the deck, but I think it's just simply outclassed by things like Cosmic Rebirth and Danitha, New Benalia's Light. Keeping that curve low in this kind of deck is pretty important. This is a fast deck. We're only running, I think it's 32 lands thanks to Turn Timber Symbiosis, but then we've got Sajiri Shelter. 33 lands here, plus a little bit of ramp. This deck's just trying to go so fast that it really doesn't need a lot of lands, and keeping that mana value low helps a lot with this deck. Next up, we're going to be doing Radha of the Lost Ark, aka Grand Warlord Radha. This is a Gruul combat-focused deck. This is one of the most aggressive decks that I have built in paper. This is all about dropping Radha, dropping a bunch of little dudes or things that can generate little dudes, and then making an absolute ton of mana and blowing people out, be it with infinite combats or with massive sources of damage like Comet Storm or Gyra's Immolating Inferno. Look at that right there. The card that we're going to be looking at out of Grand Warlord Radha here, who makes mana when things attack, is Samut, Vizier of Naktamun. 1 red and a green for a 2/3 legendary human warrior cleric. You get a first strike, vigilance, and haste creature. Whenever a creature I control deals combat damage to a player, if that creature entered this turn, draw a card. Well, this deck likes to do lots of combats, and it likes to have lots of hasty creatures. We've got lots of ways to give haste, be it things like Urabrask here, who can be seen in Phyrexian, be it things like Tilinali Summoner, who makes a bunch of attacking dudes. We've got Ant Queen, who's making dudes, and then, of course, we have lots of effects that are giving haste. where are my enchantments? There we go. We got Uncivil Unrest giving haste here. We've got Aggravated Assault just making lots of attackers. Really, we're just like looking for ways to drop creatures on the board really quickly and then just start swinging in with a whole bunch of them. We even have, let's see, where are they? Other than Urabrask here, we've got, I know there's one other haste enabler in this deck. Where are you? Where are you? No, not Karlach. It doesn't matter. There's another haste enabler in this deck somewhere, and what really matters here is that we are swinging hard, we're swinging fast, and we are killing people out of absolutely nowhere. So the card that I am removing here, in exchange for Summit, is Shamanic Revelation. This is a card that I've had in this deck for quite a while. I, in fact, have had the really fancy Fate Reforged promo. Not that Fate Reforged promo. This Fate Reforged? No, not that one either. I have a version of this card that's really cool because it is alternate art from Fate Reforged. There it is, the alt art from Fate Reforged. Really pretty, in foil. But it's a sorcery speed. It's 5 mana. If I don't have a lot of creatures out, this is not drawing me cards at all. It doesn't really have another mode, and you only get that life as long as you have things with power or 4 or greater. Rada actually has 3 power, so she does not count. So I think Samut is going to be a better move in here. It's going to draw me a lot more cards in the long run, and so we're going to be trying that one out instead. Lastly, we're going to be looking at my partner pairing of Silas Wren, Seeker Adept, and Rebek, Architect of Ascension, what I call Silas Rebek Metal AF. This is a strong artifacts-focused deck that is seeking to get a lot of artifacts on the board and then offer a lot of protection for my board by just having a lot of artifacts on the board and giving them protection thanks to Rebek, turning things into artifacts with things like Encroaching Mycosynth, and just having a lot of strong artifact creatures and a lot of strong recursion for my large suite of artifacts in this deck. And the card that we are looking at out of March of the Machine Aftermath for this deck is Karn, Legacy Reforged. This is a 5 mana star legendary artifact creature, a golem. Karn has been desparked here, as have many of the other legendary creatures we saw earlier. And he has power and toughness equal to the greatest mana value among artifacts I control. At the beginning of my upkeep, you add a colorless for each artifact you control, and this mana can only be spent to cast artifact spells or activate your abilities. Or basically, it's the same thing as Power Stones. It can't be spent to cast non-artifact spells. And you don't lose this mana as Steps and Phases end. Now, this deck has some high mana values. This is not an artifact, but it can become one. This is a 7 mana artifact. There's 6. We've got enough in here where I think Karn will be a decent size and generating enough mana every single turn for it to feel pretty darn worthwhile. He seems really good, and also just he's going to be offering protection from 5 for this deck thanks to Rebek. Now, the card that I'm going to be pulling out of this deck, in my opinion, is going to be Solemn Simulacrum. I have had this beautiful art of the Sad Robot for a while in this deck, and it's a solid little role filler. It plays a role. It comes in, you get your basic. When it dies, you draw a card. Silas Wren can recast it, but I have been feeling pretty down on Solemn Simulacrum at 4 mana for a while. I think we're going to be trying brand new Karn over Solemn Simulacrum in this deck. Alright, so that's all the deck updates that I'm going to be doing out of this set. If you would like to see any of these as a deck tech, please let me know again in the comments below. Next, I'm going to do a quick run through of a couple other cards that I just thought were interesting out of this set. First one we are going to be talking about is Copper Coat Vanguard, and we're going to look at the way cooler art here. This is a really nice little role filler for humans decks. It gives your humans +1/+0, and has Ward 1 for only 2 mana as a 2/2. Pretty cool card, and if you are playing a humans deck or something that has a lot of humans in it, this card might be pretty decent in your deck. Next we have Filter Out. This is 1 blue for an instant. It bounces all non-creature, non-land permanents to their owner's hand. It's like a mini Cyclonic Rift as long as there aren't a bunch of creatures out. While this card is not as powerful and defensive as cards like Cyclonic Rift and other mass removal spells, I think this is really interesting as a opponents have powerful stacks pieces on the board. This is a nice way to kind of filter those out of the board and give yourself an opening with the creatures that you've got if your opponent isn't running a whole lot of them. A card like this would be really nasty, for instance, against my Pramicon Pillow Fort. That's the word I was looking for. Pramicon Pillow Fort deck. And, I think this card's worth checking out. Next, we have Reckless Handling. This is a card set on Zendikar, based on Nahiri's little story here, which you can read on the Magic website. I recommend it. I thought the stories for Aftermath were really good. I just wish we had more of them. Wizards, please. I beg you. Give me more Magic fiction for this set. Show me more of the Aftermath that you put on these cards. Anyway, circling back to the actual Magic card, this is 1 in a red. Search your library for an artifact card, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle, then pitch a card at random. If an artifact was discarded this way, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. This is like a 2-mana artifact-only gamble. I don't think this is better than Gamble. This definitely doesn't replace Gamble, but I think this is an interesting option if you need another Gamble in your decks that care about artifacts in red. We have Nissa, Resurgent Animist next. Here's her alt frame. We get this alt frame because she is currently trapped on Zhalfir, or at least is on Zhalfir in this set. We see her go through the Omen Gates in the stories, so who knows where she'll end up next. But Zhalfir got the old border frame here. She is one of the desparked planeswalkers. At the start of this story, we discovered that there was a big spark rupture, and a bunch of planeswalkers suddenly found themselves without their sparks. So Nissa is a 3/3 for 3. She's a legendary elf scout, and she is a landfall commander that cares about elves or elementals. So when you play land, you get Lotus Cobra. You get a mana. And then if it happens twice in a turn, you get to reveal cards from the top of your library till you essentially reveal an elf or an elemental and put it in your hand. The rest go on the bottom. So it's like drawing Cascade for a free elf or elemental. Some people have been doing some interesting combo brews around this by just playing a select number of elves or elementals that are really powerful. But I also just think this is a really solid landfall deck, especially if you are caring about your elves and not about your elementals, even in mono green. Pretty interesting card. It's not like an elf ball commander or anything, but it's certainly a lands commander that gets you some free creatures for your troubles. We have Calyx, Guided by Fate next. Let's look at the really pretty art. There we go. This is 1 green and a white for a 2/2 legendary enchantment creature, human druid. He has Constellation, so when he enters the battlefield or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 on target creature. And when he or an enchanted creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you get a token that's a copy of a non-legendary enchantment you control once per turn. What a powerful effect. This is really interesting. Selesnya, so green and white, have been getting a lot of really interesting enchantment effects over the years, most recently with Sithis. Siona, of course, one I talked about a little while ago. And I think this Calyx is a powerhouse. What a crazy effect, getting just a free copy of a non-legendary enchantment. You can get your auras, so you can enchant something else, and then further allow Calyx or an enchanted creature to trigger and make more copies. You're also putting 1/1 counters on them every time you pull that off alongside your normal game plan. I think this guy looks like a super powerful commander for enchantments, and if that's something you're looking for, Calyx might be your guy. Next we have Campus Renovation. This is set on Strixhaven, and just look at that Strixhaven art! Seriously, this frame is incredible. The art style that they use for these are unbelievable. Anyway, 3 red and white for a sorcery. You get to return an artifact or enchantment from your graveyard just straight to the battlefield. Then you can exile the top 2 cards of your library, or not even can, you do. And you can play them until the end of your next turn. So this card is like Impulse Draw 2 until your next turn, and get a free artifact or enchantment. Huh. Looks like red and white have some really good, really high-cost enchantments. And you can, of course, play this in decks that just contain red and white. And you can use other colors. Things like Bolas's Citadel if you're in black. Things like, Omniscience if you're in blue. Campus Renovation can grab any of those as long as they're in your graveyard. This seems phenomenal in the right decks. Really interesting card. We have Gold Forged Thopteryx next. This is set on Ixalan. It is an artifact dinosaur Thopter creature, and it has flying and lifelink. It's a 1/3 for white and a blue, and each legendary permanent you control has Ward 2. I like that this is legendary permanent and not just legendary creature or legendary artifact. This seems really powerful, and if you have a deck that is base white-blue with legends in it, unfortunately I don't have like a strong legend theme in white-blue in any of my decks. My legendary deck is actually white-black-green, but I think this card is a phenomenal include in any deck like that that does play a lot of legendaries. Ward 2 is shockingly significant even in a format like Commander. I think this card is worth your time. We have Jarena, Dauntless General. Let's look at the good art. There we go. Look at that beautiful comic book art. This new border that they put together for the set. She is white and black for a 2/2 legendary human soldier. When she enters, you get to exile target player's graveyard, and you can sack her to give humans you control hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. I don't think this is going to be anybody's commander. Commanders that sacrifice themselves like this usually are not good enough for like a big deck overall. But Jarena is pretty darn strong as an include in your deck just by giving your humans deck some extra protection for just 2 mana while being a decent bear body in the meanwhile. And you get to exile free graveyard when she comes in too. I think the only thing that would have made this card a little better was giving it flash. It's a shame that it doesn't have it, but that would certainly make this a lot stronger of a card. Either way, really cool card. I just don't think it'll be making the cut as a commander. We have Joel Rail, Voice of Zhalfir next for 2 green-blue. You get to check out Miss Joel Rail, who has finally gained a second color in green. This is her alternate art for Zhalfir with that old border frame. And she is a 2 green-blue legendary human druid. She's a 3/3. Beginning of combat on your turn, a land you control becomes an XX green and blue bird with flying and haste until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your grip. It's still a land. Whenever a land creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. I think this card is a really nice complement to the Tatyova we got out of Dominaria United. I just really wish this card was like Bant or maybe had some red in it for Teamer. Wizards has been teasing, in my opinion, at like a land creatures commander for a while and in a bunch of colors. And I just don't think we are quite there on the full support. I think this card is a really phenomenal step in the right direction, though. And I'm actually going to grab, let's see, did I put it next to this, or is it a little further along? There's one other card that's right there. It is Rebuild the City. That's right in the same vibe. This card is also, I mean, for one, the art is unbelievable. This is 3 and then black, red, green, so Jund. Choose target land, make 3 tokens that are copies of it, except they're 3/3 creatures in addition to their other types and have vigilance and menace. This is the same kind of vibe, like teasing like a land creatures matter kind of deck. This card, though, is ridiculous. You're paying 6 mana, you're getting 3 brand new lands that are creatures, so you can't tap them right away. But they're 3/3s with relevant keywords and have your land's abilities. Sure, yeah, why would I not want to make, more, I don't know, Cabal coffers or just make copies of really good lands? And getting them to be some okay beaters as well that have vigilance, which means you can swing first and then tap later. I think this is pretty important. This is a really great card, too. All right, moving on out of that, we have the Kenrith's Royal Funeral. This was actually the first card previewed out of this set. 2 white and a black for a legendary enchantment. When this enters the battlefield, you can exile up to 2 legendary creature cards from your graveyard and then draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the highest mana value among cards exiled this way. And then your legendary spells cost 1 less for each card you exiled that way. This is a pretty decent little like Legendary Matters enchantment. I think I'm going to be giving this a try perhaps in my Yoshimaru Reihan Legendous Matter deck, but I am not sure enough on it to have included it in that initial deck update section. 4 mana is a lot to start reducing the cost of your spells in a deck like that where I'm trying to pump out something legendary every single turn. So this might be a card that I test later down the line, but I'm just not sure about yet. All right, couple more cards. We've got Kiora, Sovereign of the Deep. There we go. Look at that art. They're both phenomenal, but whew, beautiful. Dominic Mayer has been hitting it out of the park. So is Chris Ron, frankly. Y'all are doing incredible work on your art. Thank you. All right, Kiora, Sovereign of the Deep, 3 green, blue for a 4/5 legendary Merfolk Noble. Vigilance and Ward 3. Whenever you cast a sea creature, so Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, Serpent, spell from your hand, you look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the spell's mana value, and then cast a spell with mana value less than X from among them without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Sure, yeah, I would love to make all of my sea creatures cascade into a free card that also doesn't have to be one of those sea creature types as well. Wow, really powerful stuff here. A buddy of mine actually has a Sea Creatures deck. Was really excited about Knossos out of Jumpstart 2022. I bet he's going to be even more excited to get his hands on this Kiora. Shame about her being desparked and not getting a story, though, Wizards. All right, we have Nahiri, Forged in Fury next. 4 red, white for a 5/4 legendary core artificer who has affinity for equipment, so this can be as little as red and white. Whenever an equipped creature you control attacks, you can exile the top card of your library and play that card this turn. And if it's an equipment, you get it for free. Seems just incredibly powerful as an equipment commander. Pardon me. I've been talking too much. Jeez. She has affinity for equipment, so she's going to be reducing her cost. She even reduces her commander tax if you're playing enough equipments. You can either take this in a Voltron direction, stacking all of those equipments onto Nahiri, or just making kind of a legendary armory deck where you've got a bunch of dudes all suited up, and then exiling a lot more cards rather than just one big one. And again, getting the equipment for free off of this when you exile them is really, really powerful. I think Nahiri is a huge hit, and I might even try a deck list for this card. This card seems crazy good. We have Narset, Enlightened Exile next. There's the alternate frame for her. Personally, I'm going to be after this etch, though. I love gold border etched cards for some reason. Anyway, 1 blue, red, white for a 3/4 legendary human monk. Creatures you control have prowess. When she attacks, exile a non-creature, non-land with mana value less than Narset's power from a graveyard. Not yours. A graveyard. Any graveyard. Copy it and cast it for free. This card seems crazy. She has prowess. Everything you've got has prowess. I think this card is one of those cards where you just need to be packing your deck with token generators and then just a ton of cantrips, a ton of instants and sorcery effects, even your planeswalkers, even the new battles that we just got out of March of the Machine is very strongly impacted by this card. You should be going crazy on token generation effects and then lots of instants and sorceries because this card is dangerous. Turns a small army into something huge with just a couple of casts. Really powerful Narset here. We have Nashi, Moon's Legacy. This is Tamio's son, who seems to be taking his new hologram mom on an adventure. He is black, green, and blue. There we go. For a legendary rat shaman, 3/4, Menace Ward 1. When he attacks, exile up to 1 target legendary or rat card from your graveyard and copy it. Then you can cast the copy. This card feels really similar to... oh, man. Really similar to a couple other decks in this color combo where you're getting stuff out of your graveyard. I think it's interesting that he is an attack trigger. You're getting that instant card out of your graveyard as long as you have the mana to pay for it. So Nashi seems pretty interesting. You can take him either in a Legendary Matters direction or in a Rat Tribal way if you wanted, and just kind of get a free bonus rat every time Nashi attacks. His body seems decent for being a 3-drop. He has Menace to make him a little harder to block. So you're pretty well rewarded for trying to get him into combat. And they made it just safe enough, where I think he's going to be able to pull that off. Pretty interesting, pretty cool card. We have Niv Mizzet Supreme. Look at that big boy in the Ravnica at night over here. He is Wooburg for a 5/5 Legendary Dragon Avatar. He is flying. He is hexproof from mono-colored effects. And then each instant or sorcery in your graveyard that's exactly 2 colors has Jumpstart, which means you can discard a card in addition to paying that instant or sorcery's cost, and you can cast it out of your graveyard. Niv seems pretty interesting. He has a pretty clear deck restriction. You play instants and sorceries that are 2 colors, and then you cast them again out of your graveyard. I don't know how powerful that's going to end up being. We've gotten plenty of things in your graveyard have flashback type effects. Not in Wooburg, mind you, but still. And he's not himself drawing new cards like the previous Niv Mizzet in 5 colors was. But I still think this card is pretty interesting. He's a little harder to remove with that hexproof effect. He's a flyer. He's pretty big at 5/5, and he's certainly getting you, recursion for your spells as long as you have stuff to discard. So this is probably a deck that's seeking to draw a lot of cards if it wants to be able to succeed. We have Pia Nalar, Consul of Revival. She is a simple red and a white for a 2/3 Legendary Human Artificer. Look at that beautiful frame. She says, Thopters you control have haste. Whenever you play a land from exile or cast a spell from exile, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. P is kind of interesting. She doesn't feed into the getting things into exile to cast herself. I think you're going to need a lot of support to make that happen in Boros colors. But she definitely plays really nice with some recent cards that have been caring about that sort of effect in Boros colors, and so I think she's worth a look. Maybe if not as your commander, perhaps at least as just some additional support in a deck like that. All right, we got four more cards. It looks like. There we go. Rocco, Street Chef, red, green, white for a legendary creature, Elf Druid. He's a 2/4. There's his art from Capenna. Beginning of your end step, each player exiles the top card of their library. Till your next end step, each player may play the card they exiled this way. Whenever anyone plays a land from exile or casts a spell from exile, you can put a 1/1 counter on any target creature, and you make yourself a food. Rocco seems pretty cool. Sure, he's giving your opponent some resources too. You're giving your opponents effectively draw 3 across the 3 of them, and you only get 1 card. But I think that 1/1 counter synergy could certainly come in handy. He actually plays really nice with Miss Pia over here since she's in 2 of his 3 colors. You're getting food, which, if you do it right, you can convert in some pretty powerful advantage. I don't think this card is crazy. It's definitely not Rocco from original Capenna, but he's pretty cool, and if you're looking for a food commander, Rocco might be right up your alley. Next, we have Sarkhan, Soul of Flame, 1 blue-red for a 2/4 legendary human shaman. Your dragon spells cost 1 less, and whenever a dragon enters, you can have Sarkhan become a copy of it, except its name is still Sarkhan and it's legendary. This is just really cool for a Dragons deck. Probably not your commander. Probably slots really nicely into a different Dragon deck. But you're basically just every time you cast a Dragon, you get yourself the ability to get an extra copy of it for a turn. And even better, your Dragon spells cost a little less. Quick, easy. We got Sigarda, Font of Blessings next. 2 green, white for Miss Sigarda here, the Angel Legendary. 4/4 flyer. Other permanents you control have hexproof. You can look at the top card of your library at any time and cast angel spells and humans from the top of your library. There's just solid advantage for both an angels deck and a humans deck, and it's nice to have angels in more than 1 color. All right, our final card on this list is Tyvar the Bellicose. 2 black-green for a 5/4 legendary elf warrior. There's his alt art. He is an elves commander. Whenever 1 or more elves you control attack, they gain death touch until end of turn. Each creature has whenever a mana ability of this creature resolves. Put a number of 1/1 counters on it equal to the amount of mana this creature produced. This ability triggers only once each turn. Now, that trigger is per creature, not just it only happens once from Tyvar. These creatures have this ability, so if you can untap your permanent a whole bunch, you only get it once. This basically lets you go, I play all my mana dorks, Tyvar's out, and now I start beefing up my mana dorks to be able to attack with. This is a really unique take on an Elves commander, also just a really cool take on a mana dorks commander. I think he's worth looking at. All right, that's all the cards I got for you today. That's all the decks I've got to update today, so thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please let me know in the comments, and I can make more like this. All right, thanks for watching again. Bye.